Good evening, Little Masters, and welcome to episode 319 of the Prancing Pony Podcast, where all free folk of the West, now listen to my lay, for I will sing to you of Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom.
Oh, there'll be no singing here. Or is that all my wishes have come true?
I think it's that.
Is it though?
No,
Folks,
no,
I'm
probably
Sarah Brown, Shield Maiden of Rohan, and I'm here with the man of the West who really ought to leave the lay singing to the professional minstrels, Alan Sisto.
You have a point. I mean, folks won't be wounded with sweet words so much as with off-key vocals. So, all right, fair enough. Folks, join us as we lift our voices with the host of the West to praise Frodo and Sam with great praise in the last of our 2 episodes on the Field of Cormallen, the 4th chapter in Book 6 of The Lord of the Rings.
No matter how you arrive, folks, you are all welcome here in the common room. At the Prancing Pony Podcast, we are reading and talking our way through Middle-earth, with plenty of speculation and bad jokes along the way.
Now, we do love our deep dives into the lore, we love talking about our favorite themes, and a whole lot more.
Yeah, but we try to keep it light and fun, like a couple of old mates chatting at the pub. And we're really glad you've joined us.
Are you calling me old? Old mates. I see where you're going with that. All right, thank you.
Saying nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Now, we're pretty sure you're going to be glad you joined us as well. But before we get to tonight's chapter discussion, it's time to welcome one of our listeners to the North Wing. Well, today I'm pleased to bring you a new installment of The North Wing. Now, we know that Barlam and Butterbur had a room or two in the North Wing at the Prancing Pony Inn that he made special for hobbits. The North Wing is the PPP's place made special for some of our listeners to give us all a chance to get to know them. Now, rooms at the North Wing are a little hard to come by these days, so only our patrons at the Bombadil's Bequest and Círdan's Contribution tiers are eligible. So if you'd like to be one of the next patrons to join us, be sure to check out patreon.com/prancingponypod. There is a bit of a queue for the North Wing right now, but I will get to them all soon, maybe even some of them with my co-hosts this season. For now, though, please welcome tonight's guest to the North Wing, Rachel Santos.
Thank you, Alan. I'm happy to be here.
It's good to finally have you here. I know we've been trying to get you on for a little while. It's just been a long year. So thank you for your patience. So first, I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Where are you from? What do you do? And do your loved ones merely tolerate your nerdiness, or do they share it with you? That sort of thing.
That is a great question. So I live in South Carolina. I'm based in Charleston. I have lived in South Carolina my entire life.
Wow.
Professionally, I work as a marketer for a philanthropic consulting firm. I just received a promotion as their senior marketing manager. It's very enjoyable work. Thank you. As for my family, they merely tolerate the level of investment I have in Tolkien. Let's put it that way.
Here comes Rachel again. Don't
That's
say anything
right.
about Middle-earth.
I have successfully roped many of my friends into Tolkien, which is always a rewarding experience.
That is.
I love being a steward of Tolkien. Most of my closest friends have willingly sat through Jackson's films with me. And
Good.
It's always a great experience to bring more people into the fandom.
Yeah.
Family, not
great.
so much. They mostly just indulge me. But I appreciate that.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. As long as it's toleration or better, that's a win in my book.
That's all I could ask for.
Yeah. Now, of course, I've got to ask the question that we ask everybody who comes onto the Prancing Pony Podcast. This isn't going to come as a surprise. When and how did you first discover Tolkien's works? What was your experience like, and what is it that keeps you coming back?
So I first discovered Tolkien's works through Jackson's films in the early 2000s. However, my first impression, I can't really remember. I don't want to date myself too much, but I was much too young to truly understand the substance of Jackson's films when they came out in 2001 and thereafter. So my first real introduction into Tolkien is a bit of a sidebar. I play a lot of video games, and when Skyrim came out in 2011, I was struck by how similar Whiterun looked to the way that Jackson had modeled Rohan. And obviously I saw the Jackson films when I was younger, but I hadn't rewatched them at all. And my parents are not big readers. I was never introduced to Tolkien through the books. And once I started really getting into Skyrim, it piqued my curiosity. And I started taking a deeper dive back into Tolkien. I rewatched the films, and then I read the books. So I would have been in high school. And after that, I went through and read The Hobbit and didn't enjoy it as much. Watched the Hobbit films as they came out, which was not a wonderful experience. But what keeps me coming back now is the depth of the community, primarily. I discovered the PPP in 2020, and I think that was probably my first real deep dive into Tolkien. Before that, it was, I feel, knowing what I know now, that it was a very surface level attraction to Tolkien.
But you didn't know that at the time. And that's the neat thing about Tolkien, is that you can get deeper every time you read it. I mean, you can talk about, several years through the Lord of the Rings here with the PPP, but that's nothing compared to the decades that Corey Olsen will take, for instance, and there's always a deeper dive. So surface or not, I'm glad you made it into the fandom. And now I want Hama to say to Aragorn, I used to be an adventurer like you until I took an arrow to the knee.
Exactly. When you walk up to Dragon's Reach and you see it, you behold it for the first time, my first thought was, wow, this looks like Meduseld, which took me in two different directions. Yeah,
it really does. You're right.
It got me really invested into early medieval culture, which then kind of percolated throughout my undergrad career. But then it also got me into Tolkien again.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. Well, which is your favorite book in the Legendarium and why? And then what about your favorite non-Legendarium work, if you have one?
I would say my favorite non-Legendarium work is The Fall of Arthur.
Okay. That might be the first time I've heard anybody mention that one. I like it. It's a good choice.
Thank you. I have become interested in Arthuriana, and The Fall of Arthur is actually one of the first non-Legendarium books I ever purchased. The Fall of Arthur and Gawain and the Green Knight at the same time.
Okay.
And the reason that I purchased both of those books is because in undergrad, I was doing a comparative literature analysis for my thesis, which was not related to Arthuriana at all. But I saw it in the bookstore and I thought, man, this is really cool.
Yeah.
At the time, I didn't know that that was Tolkien's own purview, his own professional purview.
Yeah. That's the thing about Tolkien. If he'd never written a word of fiction, he would still have been known as an incredible scholar of Anglo-Saxon and Middle English. I mean, everything from Beowulf all the way through Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Pearl, Sir Orfeo, all of that.
Exactly.
Well, what about the Legendarium books? You're not going to get out of that question quite so easily. Which is your favorite one and why?
I think book 5 is probably my favorite book in the Legendarium.
I like how you narrow it down, not just the Lord of the Rings, but specifically book 5.
Yes.
And that's an interesting choice. I think, that's for the folks who aren't really familiar with the 6-book structure of the Lord of the Rings. That's the part of the story that is from Gandalf taking Pippin to Minas Tirith through the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, the killing of the Witch King by Éowyn, all of that good stuff, and Aragorn's arrival. It is a fantastic book. It's right up there for me with book 3. So I like that choice. Good one. So what is your favorite memory of a Tolkien activity? Maybe reading the books for the first time, maybe standing in line with friends for the movies, except you were too young, attending a moot, something along those lines.
That's a tough one. It would definitely have to be an in-person event. It's tied between the in-person PPP moot that I attended in 2022.
Yeah.
And of course, Oxen Moot. I had the pleasure of going to Oxen Moot 50 last year.
Yeah.
They both are significant for different reasons. The PPP moot was an introduction into a larger world for me. I had listened for a couple of years, but being able to actually connect faces with the names was a really powerful moment for me.
Good.
But of course, going to Oxen Moot 50.
It's in Oxford. I mean,
exactly.
Sorry, Milwaukee cannot compete with Oxford.
Yeah, Oxen Moot 50 was a really special experience for me, and it entrenched me even further into the fandom. After going to Oxen Moot 50, I became more involved in the Tolkien Society, and I now serve as a copy editor for Amon Hen Publications.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's excellent. So, I did not know that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, now it's time for the lightning round of quick questions and answers. If you're not familiar with the idea of a lightning round, it means quick answers. Who's your favorite character in The Lord of the Rings?
Boromir.
Okay. That's a good one. What's the one place and time in Middle-earth you wish you could visit?
I would say Minas Tirith before the fall.
Before the fall. That's fair. Okay. All right. Now, here's a variant of that question. What's the one place and time in Middle-earth that you wish you could live as opposed to just visit?
Rivendell in the Third Age.
Oh, yeah. It's a crowded place now.
It
They're building
is.
an apartment building on the other side of the river because everybody wants to live there. Balrog wings, actual or metaphorical? Toss me an easy one. Thank
Metaphorical.
you. All right. Do you consider yourself a Merry or a Pippin?
A Merry.
Favorite author or book other than Tolkien?
I would say Frank Herbert.
Oh, okay.
I'm also a big Dune fan.
All right. Well, Sean would be very pleased to hear that. The Lord of the Mark is off in a corner somewhere going, yay. So it's a good one. All right. Well, thank you, Rachel. I really have enjoyed having you here in the North Wing. Thank you again for coming.
Thank you for having me. It was my pleasure.
Well, it's time for all of us to head back to the common room to join the rest of the listeners. And Rachel, I hope I'll see you back here in the common room at our next Questions After Nightfall. For now, folks, we return you to the podcast in progress.
It's always a pleasure to hear from our listeners. I'm just sorry I couldn't join you for this one, Alan. But we've got some big moments tonight, so let's get right to it. Alan, you going to lead us off?
Indeed, I will. So the last time we left off, Gandalf had brought Frodo and Sam the gifts from Galadriel, right? The phial of Galadriel as well as the box. And now they're headed off to the big party. So that's where I'm going to pick up. When they were washed and clad and had eaten a light meal, the hobbits followed Gandalf. They stepped out of the beech grove in which they had lain and passed onto a long green lawn, glowing in sunshine, bordered by stately, dark-leaved trees laden with scarlet blossom. Behind them they could hear the sound of falling water, and a stream ran down before them between flowering banks until it came to a greenwood at the lawn's foot, and passed then on under an archway of trees, through which they saw the shimmer of water far away. As they came to the opening in the wood, they were surprised to see knights in bright mail, tall guards in silver and black standing there, who greeted them with honor and bowed before them. And then one blew a long trumpet, and they went on through the aisle of trees beside the singing stream. So they came to a wide green land, and beyond it was a broad river in a silver haze, out of which rose a long wooded isle, and many ships lay by its shores. But on the field where they now stood, a great host was drawn up, in ranks and companies glittering in the sun. And as the hobbits approached, swords were unsheathed, and spears were shaken, and horns and trumpets sang, and men cried with many voices and in many tongues. And sadly, I'm going to have to skip the first and last lines of the song just because otherwise it's the entirety of a work. So here we go. Cuyo I feriain anan, aglar ni feriannath. Praise them with great praise, Frodo and Samwise. Dower a berhail, cunin in anun. Aglerio, praise them, Aglerio. Alaitete, laitete, andave laitu valmet. Praise them, Corma colindor, alaita tarienna.
That was impressive.
Oh, well, thank you. It's a lot of fun. If I'm going to skip something, I'm going to skip the common language stuff, right? The common tongue. Get a chance to speak Sindhi.
That was amazing. Beautifully read.
Thank you very much. Man, what a moment that is. This is it. This is Frodo and Sam getting their due, isn't it?
Yes, and it's such a beautiful moment. And we open with Frodo and Sam getting all cleaned up and ready for the king. They've had a bit of food, and they're following Gandalf.
Of course.
They leave the Grove of Breeches and they arrive onto this long lawn in the sun, surrounded by trees that have dark leaves and deep red flowers.
You know, I have to admit, I've been trying to figure out what those trees might be. Deep red flowers, but dark leaves. So I'm thinking maybe like a crepe myrtle or, red maple doesn't seem to make sense given Ithilion's sort of Mediterranean climate, but I don't know. Do you have any thoughts? Maybe there are some trees. Maybe you're an amateur arborist and I just don't know it.
No. Funnily enough, I'm absolutely not. But the thing is that this is not the first time that we've actually got a tree that only exists in Middle-earth. Maybe this is another one of those.
That's a fair point.
Yeah. What is very noticeable is the amount of red that we have here.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful jewel color and will contrast gorgeously with that long lawn.
The green.
And, yeah, exactly. And what I think is so wonderful about this is that it's a massive contrast to what Frodo and Sam have just gone through Gorgoroth and then up Mount Doom, where there was absolutely nothing like this.
Nothing living.
Yeah. Now we're here, we have all this color and all this lush growth.
I think Ithilien alone, I mean, just coming back here, it was like the last place where it was beautiful. And
Yeah.
there's something, that's why Sam, is this all a dream last week? When he woke up and smelled the fragrance of Ithilien. But yeah. So on their way, of course, they can hear the waterfall and the little stream that's running in front of them. And they get to this opening in the wood at the end of the lawn. And man, the party is getting ready to go, isn't it?
It is. And look at the stream running in front of them. Another thing they didn't have in Mordor.
True. Yeah. Water. That would be nice. Can we fill our bottles with this one? Yeah.
I bet it tastes a lot better as well, this one.
Yeah, not that oily water that they had in Mordor. Yeah.
Yeah. Ew. Yeah, so as you say, the party is on. They enter into this opening in the wood, and there they see mailed knights, the guards of Minas Tirith in silver and black, and they're all bowing in deference to Frodo and Sam.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine how Sam is feeling at this moment? What on earth is going on?
Blown away. I think overwhelmed was the word we used last week. I think he's probably still continuing in that vein today.
I would say so. And then one blows a trumpet, perhaps to announce their arrival to everybody else, as they go through an aisle of trees next to the water.
Yeah, what a moment that must have been. So they get to the field itself here, right? This is now the Field of Cormallen. And beyond that, they can see, it doesn't say in the text, but we know what these are. They can see the Anduin and they can see Cairandros, right? The ships are lined up near the shore of the island itself. And now they've got entire companies, just groups and groups organized in ranks of soldiers, all standing and ready to honor the hobbits. This is just breathtaking.
It is the most incredible moment. Here you have these two very small people who have gone through the most appalling experience.
Yeah.
And the honor they're being shown at this moment is just incredible.
Really
and
is.
what an amazing moment. This moment arrives and it's heralded with unsheathed swords, shaken spears, music from the horns and the trumpets. And then we have this song that's not really a song at all, but a collection of lines from different voices in different languages.
Exactly. I love that. I mean, it's really, I think if you were to be there, like if you were in Frodo and Sam's shoes, and I don't know how you could convey this except the way Tolkien has done it here, these lines are all simultaneous. I mean, he's hearing the Westron, he's hearing Sindarin, he's probably also hearing Rohirric. It's just, that's not actually given to us in these words, but yeah, fantastic stuff. And Tolkien explains this in letter number 230 to Rona Bear. He writes there, the song of praise is not really a song, but is represented by a few phrases taken from the languages heard, in which English represents the common speech. The second, fourth, and sixth lines are Sindarin or Grey Elvish. The seventh and ninth are High Elvish.
And then he goes on to tell us the meaning of the Sindarin lines. He says, line 2, Quio I feriain anan, aglarni ferianath, which means, may the halflings live long, glory to the halflings. Oh, wow. And then the fourth line, Daura barhael conin and anun eglerio, means Frodo and Sam, princes of the West, glorify them. Which, oh, wow. I know, these two simple hobbits, and they're being treated like they are, and they are, the absolute heroes of this moment. And then in the sixth line, Eglerio, glorify them. Oh, I get shivers.
I know. Daur Aberhail, the translation of Frodo and Sam, but then Princes of the West, Conin and Annwn. And of course, we recognize Annwn from Peneth Annwn. I think we actually will talk about that in a little bit, so I won't steal your thunder. But he does also give us the meaning of the two Quenya lines. He explains that the seventh line, which is Alaitate laitate, andeve laituvalmet, that means bless them, long we will praise them. And then the ninth line, which I love listening to, Corma colindor alaita tarienna. That means the ring bearers bless or praise them to the height.
Wonderful. I mean, there's just the very sound of this, the language coming through here is just so gorgeous.
It is. Yeah, exactly. Just the sound of it alone, right? The aesthetics of the sound. Yeah.
Exactly. And of course, some of the Sindarin words you already know. We've talked about Feriain and Ferianath in the Minas Tirith chapter early last season. And you probably also recognized Annwn, as you were just saying. The one I
mentioned, yeah.
Peneth Annwn, window on the west. And here it's in a line that means princes of the west.
Conin and Anun. I love that. And then one of the Quenya words is very interesting. I want to talk about this a little bit. Corma Colindor, which means ring bearers. Corma is Quenya for ring. And we're in the Field of Cormallen. Now, in the appendix to the Silmarillion, we read in the entry for mal, meaning gold, that it's used, quote, in the Field of Cormallen, which means golden circle, golden ring, really, and was named from the Kulumalda trees that grew there. And don't think we'll have time to get into the Kulumalda trees, though those are, again, trees that are only found in Middle-earth. But we'll try to get those in the postscript, I think.
Did anybody else go, what now?
Yeah,
when
I know.
They realize that the Field of Cormallen means golden circle or golden ring?
Isn't that just a mind-blown thing? I mean, yeah. Talk about some symbolism, huh?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we probably could take up the next hour talking about that.
We could.
But we would digress hugely.
Yeah, let's do that, definitely.
In fact, we see this again in the revised calendar system, which is introduced as the new reckoning, the year beginning on the 25th of March, as we talked about before.
Right.
And there's also a festival day honouring Frodo at the mid-year named Cormare, meaning ring day. Ring day.
Yeah, ring day. And one more bit of word nerdery here. In Sauron Defeated, Christopher Tolkien tells us that in many of the previous drafts, quote, Old English phrases cried by the writers of Rohan were mingled, and he gives some examples. And I'm going to try, folks, please forgive my lack of being Sean. I'm just going to try a little bit of Old English here. Hale kumath wesat hale awat aldre. And no, I'm not going to try to translate that or even suggest I pronounced it correctly. Thankfully, Tolkien eventually changed it to just Wilkuman, Frodo and Samwise.
So, with the word nerdery on this song done,
let's
talk a little bit more about its significance, because this is a huge moment.
It's an absolutely huge moment. This is, for Tolkien, like the moment, the eucatastrophe. And he says as much in letter number 131. We told you we'd come back to that this week. He says, in the scene where all the hosts of the West unite to do honor and praise to the two humble hobbits, Frodo and Sam, we reach the eucatastrophe of the whole romance. That is, the sudden joyous turn and fulfillment of hope, the opposite of tragedy that should be the hallmark of a fairy story of higher or lower tone. The resolution and justification of all that has gone before. It brought tears to my eyes to write it, and it still moves me, and I cannot help believing that it is a supreme moment of its kind.
Well, it's absolutely a supreme moment of its kind, Professor.
Yeah.
But let's talk a bit more about this, because this is the eucatastrophe, not the destruction of the ring, though that is most certainly eucatastrophic. Yeah. This is the peak of the story. This is its climax. And in fact, Tolkien says that everything else is the tail of the story in the very next paragraph of that letter. He says, but it is not the end of the sixth book or of The Lord of the Rings as a whole, for various reasons. The chief artistic one, that the music cannot be cut off short at its peak. Also, the history is left in the air, unfinished. Also, I like tying up loose ends and hate them in other people's books. I like to wind up the clues, as do not only children, but most folk of hearty appetite. Again, the story began in the simple shire of the hobbits, and it must end there, back to common life and earth, the ultimate foundation again. Finally, and cogently, it is the function of the longish coda to show the cost of victory, as always, and to show that no victory, even on a world-shaking scale, is final. The war will go on, taking other modes.
Wow, that is some powerful stuff right there, to talk about this long coda, right? The tail, that's what that means. And it's the rest of the story is sort of the denouement. No victory is final. We've talked about this before for years on the show. This is, we can think about Galadriel talking about fighting the long defeat.
Right.
We can think about all the Beowulf moments. Yes, victory is real. It has happened and we have defeated Sauron, and yay, and let's praise Frodo and Sam. But there's always going to be a fight. There's always going to be a war going on. And we'll see that when the hobbits get back to the Shire. I love that, though. He's got to get back to the Shire. It started there. It's got to end there.
Yes, you've got to bring it round full circle.
Absolutely. Well, I want to go back to that line that we read from letter number 131 earlier when Tolkien said that it brought tears to my eyes to write it, and it still moves me. I don't think I'm stretching things to say that it still moves us as readers pretty greatly. This is a deeply powerful moment. I want to expand on that, though, by going to another letter, and this is 241. It's to his Aunt Jane Neve. Tolkien was explaining how he was dead stuck in the process of writing the book when, quote, "It was not until Christopher was carried off to South Africa that I forced myself to write book 4, which was sent out to him bit by bit. That was 1944. I did not finish the first rough writing till 1949, when I remember blotting the pages, which now represent the welcome of Frodo and Sam on the Field of Cormallen, with tears as I wrote."
Yeah, not the first time he said how much this chapter moved him to
Yes.
write it.
Yeah.
And this letter to his Aunt Jane was written in 1962. And he's recalling a moment 13 years previously
Yeah.
when he's literally moved to tears as he wrote this passage, which just tells us how much it has lived in his mind.
Exactly. It stuck with him. And there are a couple other letters where he mentions this moment specifically as one of those emotional moments that just continues to come back to him as one of his favorites.
Absolutely.
I have to add one more thing. I was very, very fortunate to be able to attend the Art of the Manuscript exhibit back in October of 2022 at the Haggerty Library at Marquette University when we held the PPP moot there. I got to see this page with my own eyes. I could make out the smudged ink and the tear-stained paper. He wasn't making this up. He wasn't exaggerating about how moved he was by this passage. And I have to say, just seeing that, sort of seeing the evidence of his own emotional kind of being just blown away by this moment himself was moving. Just seeing that result was really something else.
Oh, and I'm just so jealous that you got to see the actual page.
Oh, it's breathtaking. It really was.
Yes, I bet it was. So let's talk about how much we are moved by this passage.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to skip over the importance of this chapter.
I agree.
It's not very long. It almost seems to be filler at first glance because you've had this massive moment in Mount Doom and you've had the ending of Sauron, and you could think, well, that's surely the climax of the story.
Right. The destruction of the ring.
Exactly. Isn't that the whole point?
Mm-hmm.
But actually, no, it isn't
No.
the whole point of the story. If it was, we could just end it there.
That's right.
But actually, the whole point is that the whole turn of the world is affected by the courage, the indomitable courage of these two small people who went through the most appalling experience to do what they needed to do. They put everything on the line, and without having soldiers in front of them to say, okay, I point my sword at you and I stab at you and this is what happens, right? The foe that they are really defeating is in themselves. And that's incredibly powerful. And it's rightly celebrated because I'm not saying that it's not brave to be in a battle. Of course it's brave to be in a battle.
Yeah,
but you can put a sword in any fool's hand. But
that is true.
Right. But you can't put the ring in any fool's hand.
No. As we've talked about before over and over again, most people far and away would not have gotten, as far along as Frodo did. I mean, anybody greater, if we want to put air quotes around that, right? So let's talk about Gandalf or even Aragorn, for instance, would have surrendered to the temptation of the ring sooner, to take that power for himself. And somebody weaker would never have even made it as far as, certainly not as far as Frodo did. He was sort of that perfect balance and that humility that he had to get there. But yeah, this is, like you said, it's easy to skip, isn't it? Because the next big moment is Aragorn's coronation in the next chapter. And of course, everybody's favorite highlight, Faramir and Eowyn's little love story. So we're looking forward to that ourselves.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, to look over this chapter and this moment and sort of think of it as, all right, well, fine. Okay, this is the end of Star Wars when Luke and Han and Chewie are getting their medals from Princess Leia, and we can sort of skip that, right?
Mm-hmm.
No, this is more than just that. And
it really is. Because otherwise you'd have ceremonies like this saying, yay King Theoden, and yay Aragorn, and yay Éomer, because you're awesome. And that's not to say they aren't awesome, but these two hobbits are the only ones who could do what they have done.
They've literally changed the world.
Right. And I don't, as you said, I don't think anybody else could have done that, which makes it the most incredible achievement to do what they have done. To step where nobody else stepped, and to fight their own inner demons to get there. Which, that I think, if you're going to look for the main point of this book, the main point is not the moment where the ring is destroyed. The main point is acknowledging what it takes to get the ring there.
Yeah. Wow. Well said. I also have to mention real quick, I loved your use of the word indomitable, talking about the courage of Frodo and Sam. I remember lingering on that word a little bit in the last chapter, because there's a part where Sauron is unaware of the peril that crept small but indomitable into the very heart of his guarded realm. And it brings us back to some of the things in the prologue and how they're doughty at bay, that is exactly what we're seeing here. The endurance, the stamina, the absolute determination that Frodo and Sam showed to get as far as they got.
Right, without breaking halfway there.
Exactly. And I love the way you put it last week, because I don't know that I'd thought about it this way. You pointed out that Frodo's mission, his quest, was not to destroy the ring. His quest was to get the ring to the cracks of doom. And he did that.
Yeah, he did that.
Yeah.
Which is why we can have many hours of discussion about the Frodo fails thing.
Oh,
yeah.
I know. Get me started on that, and we're going to be here all day.
Exactly.
Get Tolkien started on that. You're going to be here all day. He talked about that in his letters, at least a half a dozen different letters. Yeah.
Yeah, that would be quite the digression.
Wouldn't it? Well, we'll come back. We'll digress even more right after the break. Now, we'll get back to the blushing Samwise in just a moment, but first we want to remind you that there's a lot more talk going on at the Prancing Pony podcast than just us.
Oh, yes, just as well. The PPP has an amazing listener community. They're always coming up with great questions and discussions across all our social media spaces. Check out our common room on Facebook, our dedicated subreddit, Twitter, and more.
Now, on Facebook, just look for the Prancing Pony podcast. Follow the page to get some news, but you're going to want to join the group to get in some great discussions.
Absolutely. But if you prefer Reddit, find us there at r/PrancingPonyPod. On Twitter and Instagram, we're simply at PrancingPonyPod.
And if you want daily Tolkien content, check out Today's Tolkien Times on YouTube and all your favorite podcast apps. It's my new short format daily show with everything from Tolkien Tuesday to Fandom Fridays. Be sure to check it out at youtube.com/@TolkienTimes. And follow @Tolkien Times on all your social media. For now, though, let's get back to the guys who are being properly celebrated. Sarah, could you pick up where I left off?
Oh, I'd love to. Here we go. We'll have to skip a little bit at the start, skip the first paragraph, but I'm going to come in here. On the throne sat a mail-clad man. A great sword was laid across his knees, but he wore no helm. As they drew near, he rose, and then they knew him. Changed as he was, so high and glad of face, kingly, lord of men, dark-haired with eyes of grey. Frodo ran to meet him, and Sam followed close behind. "Well, if this isn't the crown of all," he said. "Strider, or I'm still asleep." "Yes, Sam, Strider," said Aragorn. "It is a long way, is it not, from Bree, where you did not like the look of me? A long way for us all. But yours has been the darkest road." And then, to Sam's surprise and utter confusion, he bowed his knee before them, and taking them by the hand, Frodo upon his right and Sam upon his left, he led them to the throne, and setting them upon it, he turned to the men and captains who stood by and spoke, so that his voice rang over all the host, crying, "Praise them with great praise." And when the glad shout had swelled up and died away again, to Sam's final and complete satisfaction and pure joy, a minstrel of Gondor stood forth and knelt and begged leave to sing. And behold, he said, "Lo, lords and knights and men of valour unashamed, kings and princes, and fair people of Gondor, and riders of Rohan, and ye sons of Elrond and Dunedain of the north, and elf and dwarf and great hearts of the Shire, and all free folk of the west, now listen to my lay, for I will sing to you of Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom." And when Sam heard that, he laughed aloud for sheer delight, and he stood up and cried, "O great glory and splendour, and all my wishes have come true." And then he wept. And all the host laughed and wept, and in the midst of their merriment and tears, the clear voice of the minstrel rose like silver and gold, and all men were hushed. And he sang to them, now in the elven tongue, now in the speech of the West, until their hearts, wounded with sweet words, overflowed, and their joy was like swords, and they passed in thought out to regions where pain and delight flow together, and tears are the very wine of blessedness. Pass me a tissue.
I'm not crying. I'm not crying.
No,
Are you crying?
Nope, it's definitely rain on my computer.
Oh, wow. I mean, we'll get to that, but wow. I'm just going to say that last paragraph may be one of the most emotionally evocative bits of prose that I've ever read by anybody.
And I think all I would hope is that I did it justice reading it, because it's such a beautiful passage.
Isn't it? Yeah. It's just, we'll get there. We'll get there, I promise. And yes, you did fantastic. Yeah. And you can pay me later for letting you read that, by the way.
You're not kidding. And I have to be very honest, the bit where Sam says, "Oh, great glory and splendour," I'm actually swallowing the lump in my throat while trying to read it.
I'm imagining poor Sam. He just, overwhelmed. Again, that's the sense that I'm getting this entire time. But we're going to go back. First, the part that we had to skip, right? We skipped most of that first paragraph. We see how this scene has impacted Frodo and Sam. Their eyes are shining. Their faces are blushing, understandably so. They go forward and they see these 3 seats, really thrones, up on the grass and turfs, by the way, folks. That's just plural for turf, each with their respective banners.
We've got the Rohan banner, white horse on green, the Dol Amroth banner, silver swan ship on blue, and behind the highest throne, the white tree on a black field with the silver crown and 7 stars.
Oh, that is just gorgeous. And as they get closer, right, they see that the man on the throne looks familiar. And this is where we get back to the part that you did read. The gray eyes, the dark hair, and though he's a bit changed, the text says, he's high and kingly now.
That's not what he looked like when we met him at the Inn at Bree.
No, it wasn't. High and kingly is not the way you described that guy.
No. Frodo races up to him first. Sam's right behind, but it's Sam who speaks first, calling him Strider.
I'm shocked that it was Sam who spoke first. Are you?
No. But I thought about that for a moment. This must have been quite the moment for Aragorn. Not only does he see these 2 hobbits with whom he travelled for so long and for whose quest he did so much, but as we'll find out later, he's gone to the very limits of his ability as a healer to bring them back from death. Yeah. He's pretty invested, you might say.
Yeah, you very well might say that. I mean, without their success, he's still a bachelor.
Right.
Yeah.
Indeed.
And also not king.
That's not what he wants at all.
No, not at all. But Strider, or Aragorn, or Elessar, whatever you want to call him, he doesn't skip a beat, right? He gives Sam a reminder of where they started in Bree, and then acknowledges that their road, Sam's and Frodo's road, was the darkest road. And of course it was. Right. I mean, going into Mordor itself, and not just Mordor, but the very heart of Mordor, to Mount Doom.
Yeah, hence praise them with great praise, right?
Absolutely. And then we get a glimpse of Aragorn's humility here. I mean, look, I know we got this in the film, right? You bow to no one. This is very much that moment translated, right? I mean, Jackson kind of did what he could. He didn't do the Field of Cormallen, so he does it instead after the coronation. But here, he genuflects towards Frodo and Sam, guides them to his own throne, and sets them on it, calling out for the people to praise Frodo and Sam once more. Man.
Right. And then we get that highlight for Sam.
Oh,
the minstrel
yes.
of Gondor singing the lay of Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom.
Yeah.
Which is the song that Sam twice said he'd like to hear while he and Frodo awaited what they could only imagine was their imminent end at the foot of an erupting Mount Doom.
Mm-hmm.
This is a song that's absolutely essential to this story, and yet it's a song we do not get to hear sung.
I know. I want to know this song, but once again, that's just the way Tolkien does this, right? He sets these things up in such a way as to sort of get our minds in the moment without giving us all the detail. It's almost a textual ruin, kind of, not quite. But Dr. Verlin Flieger has something very interesting to say about this, and I want to bring this up. It's from Interrupted Music, and she says there that, in one sense, the most important poem in the book is the Gondorian minstrel's lay, sung at the Field of Cormallen to celebrate Frodo of the Nine Fingers, an unrecorded performance that within the fiction must stand as the first telling of the story that became The Lord of the Rings. That I hadn't thought about. It's the frame narrative again. You know, we've talked about that before so many times, but here it is, the first time the story's told.
Right. Yeah. And when you actually wrap your mind around this, that we've had the story, now the story is going to be told by the minstrel.
Yeah.
But actually, let's take another step back here and remember that this is all supposed to have been written down in the Red Book, which Tolkien has translated, not written. And suddenly my head is spinning with the idea of meta-narrative, because it's just like, okay, where? And actually, this is really interesting. Where does this story start and finish?
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, where does it start? Does this start at the Council of Elrond, or does it start all the way back with Bilbo finding the ring?
Yeah, because we have this telling of the tale. How much of the tale does the minstrel actually know at this point?
Oh, yeah. That's true too.
He's got to have gone around and got his evidence from whoever, he's been talking to. But this is the first telling of the story. Like any lay, it's going to get added to.
That's true.
Right? Because that's what happens with these stories. And this is a story being told of a story that's being translated from a story that's come from a book.
It's like looking in a mirror and seeing a mirror on the other side of the wall, and then the mirror just, yeah.
Right.
My goodness. Wow. Yeah. Head spinning for sure.
Verlin Flieger goes on to point out that, quote, this indispensable narrative is alluded to twice, once here, but it is also imagined some pages earlier by Sam Gamgee at the foot of Mount Doom. What a tale we have been in, he observes to Frodo. I wish I could hear it told. Sam does indeed hear it, but the reader never does. Yet its effect is all the greater for the performance being withheld.
Exactly. Right. That's the thing. I think it does have a greater impact on it because we don't see the song. We don't see the lyrics to the song, that is. And that's when she cites letter number 96, which Tolkien wrote to his son Christopher. The professor writes there, a story must be told or there'll be no story. Yet it is the untold stories that are most moving. Flieger goes on to argue from that the untold story of Nine-Fingered Frodo, nested within the told story of The Lord of the Rings, becomes the quintessential illustration of the maxim, and Sam, its most typical exponent. Wow.
Yeah.
She has such a way with words, doesn't she?
Oh, well, yes, there is none better than Verlin Flieger for something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting how many times within the text itself, we are told about song and we are told about story.
Yeah.
There's even that moment where in Lothlorien, Sam says he feels like he's inside a song.
Yeah.
And he is, he just doesn't know it yet.
That's correct. Yeah, it's an unwritten song at that point, but he's absolutely within a song. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And if you really want to take that a little bit further, the French verb to sing is chanter, from which we get enchanté, from which we have enchanted. So if you're inside a song, you are literally enchanted.
Oh, my.
Which works really well with Lothlorien.
Wow. Oh, that is some high-level word nerdery right there, Sarah. Thank you.
I do like a bit of word nerdery.
Good stuff.
I'm not at Sean's level. I'm just saying
none of us are. None of us are. Maybe you and me combined, maybe we're at the level.
Praise him with great praise.
Exactly.
Okay, so Sam's response laughter from delight. His wishes have come true, followed by weeping.
Yeah.
And this doesn't surprise me, actually. You
No.
know, he's so joyous,
Yeah.
and he's got so much emotion just bottled up inside of him, right?
Yeah, it's just, it overcomes him. He's overwhelmed. And I think it's interesting here because it's a reverse order of his earlier emotional response when he began to weep, but then was overcome by laughter. And it's just, like you said, that just his being overwhelmed and overcome by emotion. It's all right there at the very, it's pouring over the top of a cup. Every last bit of emotion is just spilling out of him.
Yeah. And he doesn't quite know what to do with it, so he's just letting it all out, because that's Sam.
Exactly. Yeah, that is who Sam is, yeah.
His response is similar to that of all the people here honoring him and Frodo. They all laugh and cry. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of all that is the singing of the minstrel.
Now, he sings in the Elven tongue. We're not told which one, so part of me, I wonder, is he singing in Sindarin or Quenya? I mean, you know, Thingol's not there to tell him he can't use Quenya, so maybe It's a little bit of that. And then, of course, also in Westeron, the common speech.
Yeah, and then we get what I have to say is possibly the most heartbreakingly beautiful prose I've read.
Yeah.
I know last week we read something almost equally poignant from Sam asking if everything sad was going to come untrue.
Yeah.
Followed by the passage when Gandalf laughed and Sam's reaction to that.
Yeah. But this, I got to say, I mean, and let me read that part again that Sara read so beautifully. Until their hearts, wounded with sweet words, overflowed, and their joy was like swords, and they passed in thought out to regions where pain and delight flow together, and tears are the very wine of blessedness. I just had, it's you got to read it twice. It's so pretty. It had to be read twice. I got to say, though, this blend of pain and delight, I want to linger on a bit. It brings me back to one of my favorite lines of dialogue in the book. And it's when Haldir, he's talking to Merry as he's leading the company through Lothlorien. And he says, "The world is indeed full of peril, and in it there are many dark places. But still there is much that is fair. And though in all lands love is now mingled with grief, it grows perhaps the greater." We get love is now mingled with grief, and I can't help connecting that with pain and delight flow together. There's something about these seeming opposites, love and grief, pain and delight, that isn't really as opposite as it might look like on the surface, huh?
No, they're both extremes of emotion, if you like, but how can we feel the one without experiencing the other? How can we know that we're feeling great delight unless we've experienced its opposite? You can't live in the beige of emotions, right?
You can, but it'd be really unpleasant, wouldn't it?
Yes, yeah. And I'm sorry to everybody out there who's a fan of beige, by the way, but I think you know what I mean. That this is human experience.
It is,
isn't it? We do experience both. And that makes the joy all the sweeter when the grief is there as well, because we pay attention to it more. It's more important because we see it in juxtaposition. And I think that's why we've got these two different emotions together, because the juxtaposition shows their importance.
Yeah.
You can't live through life without pain. You can't live through life without sadness or grief.
Yeah.
But if we have love, it tempers that grief and it gives greater importance to the love. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, it absolutely does. I think the contrast enhances the quality of each of these things. It's the whole idea of bittersweet, right? I mean, this is
right.
You think, okay, to regions where pain and delight flow together. You're thinking about the delight, the victory over Sauron. The ring is destroyed. The world is rescued. Gondor has a king again. And yet at what price? You think of comrades who have fallen on the battlefield of the Pelennor. You think of the sorrows and struggles and Frodo's missing finger and the weeks of misery and suffering that they endured to get there. All of these things are also pain, and yet they're deeply connected to the delight. It's not that you can't have one without the other. You can certainly have pain without any delight. I mean,
of course you can.
You know, that is definitely possible. But what makes this moment so rich is the combination of the two. It is that bittersweet flavor of both. And as you said, it's that juxtaposition. It's the the pain that makes the delight maybe a little more delightful.
Mm-hmm.
And yet at the same time, we remember the loss that's endured while we're experiencing that delight. And that maybe brings us down to earth a little bit, but it flavors the delight. Yeah. Tears of the very wine of blessedness, same kind of thing, right? I mean, we're talking about sorrow.
Not all tears are an evil.
Exactly. And what a phrase that is, though. Tears of the very wine of blessedness.
Yeah. Because here is a moment in which we have time to let the tears flow. When we're in the midst of all of the pain and the angst and we have to do.
Yeah, you're at the black gate. You don't have time to stop and cry. Yeah.
No, really no. But now we can take a breath. We can let those emotions out. We can allow the tears to fall. We can grieve our fallen comrades whilst also weeping for joy that the thing is done.
Yeah.
Right? We have now the time, the peace, the moment to let the tears fall.
Yeah, it is just such a heartbreakingly rich passage.
It really is.
Great stuff. Wow. Enjoy that, folks, because that kind of prose just, I don't know, nobody writes like that anymore.
No, they do not. Okay, so shall we move on to the next section? Do you want to kick us off with that, Alan?
We shall, though. I mean, really, we could just hang out where Tears of the Very Wine of Blessedness for another hour. That's okay with me. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and skip a paragraph and pick up right after that. Frodo and Sam were led apart and brought to a tent, and there their old raiment was taken off, but folded and set aside with honor, and clean linen was given to them. Then Gandalf came, and in his arms, to the wonder of Frodo, he bore the sword and the elven cloak and the mithril coat that had been taken from him in Mordor. For Sam he brought a coat of gilded mail, and his elven cloak, all healed of the soils and hurts that it had suffered. And then he laid before them 2 swords. "I do not wish for any sword," said Frodo. "Tonight, at least, you should wear one," said Gandalf. Then Frodo took the small sword that had belonged to Sam, and had been laid at his side in Cirith Ungol. "Sting I gave to you, Sam," he said. "No, master. Mr. Bilbo gave it to you, and it goes with his silver coat. He would not wish anyone else to wear it now." Frodo gave way, and Gandalf, as if he were their esquire, knelt and girt the sword belts about them. And then, rising, he set circlets of silver upon their heads. And when they were arrayed, they went to the great feast. And they sat at the king's table with Gandalf, and King Eomer of Rohan, and the Prince Imrahil, and all the chief captains, and there also were Gimli and Legolas. But when, after the standing silence, wine was brought, there came in 2 esquires to serve the kings. Or so they seemed to be. One was clad in the silver and sable of the guards of Minas Tirith, and the other in white and green. But Sam wondered what such young boys were doing in an army of mighty men. Then, suddenly, as they drew near and he could see them plainly, he exclaimed, "Why, look, Mr. Frodo, look here! Well, if it isn't Pippin! Mr. Peregrine Took, I should say, and Mr. Merry! How they have grown, bless me! But I can see there's more tales to tell than ours." "There are indeed," said Pippin, turning towards him, "and we'll begin telling them as soon as this feast is ended. In the meantime, you can try Gandalf. He's not so close as he used to be, though he laughs now more than he talks. For the present, Merry and I are busy. We are knights of the city, and of the mark, as I hope you observe."
Trust Pippin to come in and lighten the moment, right?
Always. I love that.
Okay, so we skip the first paragraph of this section, and that's where the singing and the praising finally come to an end as the minstrel wraps up the lay and kneels to the hobbits before Aragorn indicates it's time to party.
That's right. Here we go.
We picked up with Frodo and Sam being pulled aside and given clean clothes while their Mordor wear was set aside. And I wonder what happened to the Mordor wear. Is it in the Matham House at Mickle Delving? Have they got a museum at Minas Tirith? I wonder where it's gone.
I know. It's supposed to be held in honor, and I can believe it would be. It's the kind of thing you'd want to see and be, oh, there's the stuff that Frodo and Sam were wearing when they destroyed the ring. Yeah. So Gandalf comes in, blowing Frodo away, carrying all the things that had been taken from him when he was captured by the orcs. So that includes the sword, which had been Sam's, of course, right? The one of the blades of Westernesse that had been given to the hobbits by Tom Bombadil all the way back in the Barrow Downs, and his cloak from Lothlorien and the mithril coat. Now, Sam wasn't forgotten, right? He got his cloak all mended and cleaned, probably, a little starch in the collar from the dry cleaner. It was given to him along with some nice, shiny gold armor.
But when Gandalf lays the swords in front of them, Sam's old one, which had become Frodo's along with Sting, Frodo wants nothing to do with one. And I think this goes back to what he said in The Land of Shadow when he gave Sting to Sam. He says, "I do not think it will be my part to strike any blow again."
Well, and of course that squares with what we'll see in Frodo later in the Scouring of the Shire. Right there, he refrains from fighting even against the ruffians or against Sharky. So it's sort of his new change in, I don't know. I mean, it's pacifism, really. And it's interesting to see he doesn't even want to wear a sword. But Gandalf tells him, look, for now, it's appropriate for you to wear one, right? It's a sign of honor and you are to be honored. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's not, we now expect you to stick a sword in your hand and start pointing it at people.
Well, no.
It's
if there are any orcs around here, they're not going to get to you.
Yeah. It's part of the look for the evening, if you like, along with the bow tie and the tails and the shiny shoes.
And here comes Frodo with a jacket from Dolce & Gabbana and a sword from, I don't know.
Westernesse?
Westernesse, that's right. A new label, Westernesse.
So, Sam, you want to tell us who you're wearing tonight? I don't know what you mean.
Sam would have no clue what you mean.
Not a clue. So Frodo takes the sword of Westernesse and reminds Sam that Sting was his now.
Right.
But Sam won't hear of it. He says it's part of a set with the mithril coat, and Bilbo would want Frodo to wear it. Almost certainly right, I would imagine.
I think so.
Yeah. And then Frodo concedes.
Of course he does. And then we get another moment of humility from a great leader, right? First it was Aragorn bowing his knee to the hobbits. Now it's Gandalf as if he were their esquire, lowering himself, and he'd have to lower himself pretty far because the hobbits aren't tall at all.
Virtually prone on the ground at this point.
I know, he's like just crawling down there to get this. How can I get these tiny things on? And then placing little silver circlets on their heads, little, I don't know, not quite crowns, right? Just little circles of silver. Yeah.
Right. So you have like an indication of these are people of high honor.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And so now they're off to the feast, the party that started while they were getting dressed up. Yeah. And no surprise, they get to sit at the king's table with all the heroes.
Of course they do. Now, this passage, folks, it was a bit different in the first edition. It was a lot simpler. It just was, and when the hobbits were made ready and circlets of silver were set upon their heads, they went to the king's feast and they sat at his table with Gandalf. It wasn't until the second edition of 1965 that this was strengthened with the bit about the swords and with Gandalf's actions, the humility.
Tolkien just couldn't stop niggling with this, could he?
I know. It wasn't just like a small fix. I mean, he really changed it, yeah.
Yeah. Initially, though, in a draft, there was actually more than we have even in the second edition. Christopher Tolkien reveals in Sauron Defeated that their meeting with Pippin came a bit earlier. He says, but first Frodo and Sam were led apart and taken to a tent, and there their old raiment was taken off, but folded and set aside with honour, and clean linen was brought to them. But Gandalf came, and with him went an esquire, no more than a small lad he seemed, though clad in the silver and sable of the king's guard, and to the wonder of Frodo and Sam they bore the sword and the elven cloak and the mithril coat that had been taken from them. And for Sam they brought a coat of gilded mail, and on Frodo's right hand upon the middle and little fingers they set small rings of mithril, set each with a gem like a star. But the wonder of all these things was as little to the wonder on Sam's face as he looked on the face of the esquire and knew him. And he cried out, "Why, look, Mr. Frodo, look here! Save me if it isn't Pippin, Mr. Peregrine Took, I should say. Why, bless us all, but I can see there's more tales to tell than ours. It will take weeks of talk before we get it all sized up." "It will indeed," said Pippin, "but at present it's time for a feast, and you must not keep it waiting. Later on, Frodo must be locked up in a tower in Minas Tirith till he's made notes of all our doings, or Bilbo will be dreadfully disappointed."
Indeed he would. I love your reading of Pippin, by the way. That's great.
Listen, if any Scottish people are listening, I'm sorry.
Hey, look, I have to apologize to everybody who lives just on the other side of the pond altogether. Every attempt at my English accents are awful. They're very American. And
You don't want me to try a Californian accent anytime soon, so.
I've been tempted to read Frodo as like a surfer dude, just.
Oh, yeah, that'd be really cool, man.
Yeah. No.
No.
All right. Oh, I got to tell you, Sean and I used to play around all the time with like ideas of different readings. We were going to do AMR as John Wayne. We were going to do, I mean, there's so many great ideas that we're like, yeah, no, we can't do that.
The alternative audiobook?
Exactly. Be a lot of fun.
Yeah. One day.
Exactly. When HarperCollins comes calling, which, well, I'm not sure that's going to ever happen.
Don't hold your breath.
Exactly. So going back to that passage that she read from Sauron Defeated, Christopher explains that, quote, this passage was at once reconstructed to remove Pippin from the scene, and Gandalf comes to the tent alone. But then, of course, we'll meet Pippin and Merry again momentarily.
But first, we get a mention of the standing silence. And this is a callback to the window on the west, isn't it?
That's right. Before they ate, Faramir and all his men turned and faced west at a moment of silence. Faramir signed to Frodo and Sam that they should do likewise. So we always do, he said as they sat down. We look towards Numenor that was, and beyond Elvenhome that is, and to that which is beyond Elvenhome and will ever be. And this reference to the standing silence was also an addition to the 1965 second edition of the book, not present in the first publication.
Okay.
Interesting.
And then we get two suspicious-looking esquires, I suppose.
That's right. They're a little seedy-looking, man. I don't trust these guys.
Yeah. Somebody should be keeping an eye on these two. One of them looking like he belongs to the Minas Tirith crowd, all dressed in silver and black, and the other clearly part of the Rohan element of the crowd in green and white.
I keep thinking, though, he's dressed in silver and black. I think he's a Raiders fan. But, the problem is you're just ditto. And I thought you weren't going to get that. But, yeah. All right. So Sam first wonders why such young boys would be in an army. I mean, we're not anywhere near Minas Tirith itself. We're pretty far out of town for little guys to be with the army. They're clearly too young to fight. But wait. Sam recognized them, and he cries out to Frodo, hey, it's Merry and Pippin. But the first thing he notices is that they've grown, and that means, well, there've got to be a lot more stories than just the one we've got to tell.
Right. And Pippin concurs and says, we'll start catching up after the feast is over. I mean, Pippin has his ducks in a row there, isn't it? Food first.
Yeah, that's right. Food first. Well, and also job first, right?
Yes. After all, he said, Merry and I are working our shifts right now. Please leave a generous tip.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And we have the Knights of Minas Tirith and of Rohan.
Right.
There they are.
Exactly. And, you could probably get some stories from Gandalf, maybe, if he's not laughing the whole time. This is also the second time, by the way, I was thinking, where Pippin says he's not as close as he used to be.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and have you pick up. I think this time you're picking up exactly where I left off, not skipping a thing. It's at the first.
Okay, then. At last the glad day ended. And when the sun was gone and the round moon rode slowly above the mists of Anduin and flickered through the fluttering leaves, Frodo and Sam sat under the whispering trees amid the fragrance of fair Ithilien, and they talked deep into the night with Merry and Pippin and Gandalf. And after a while, Legolas and Gimli joined them. There Frodo and Sam learned much of all that had happened to the company after their fellowship was broken on the evil day at Parthgallen by Rauros Falls. And still there was always more to ask and more to tell. Orcs and talking trees and leagues of grass and galloping riders and glittering caves and white towers and golden halls and battles and tall ships sailing, all these passed before Sam's mind until he felt bewildered. But amidst all these wonders, he returned always to his astonishment at the size of Merry and Pippin, and he made them stand back to back with Frodo and himself. He scratched his head. Can't understand it at your age, he said. But there it is. You're 3 inches taller than you ought to be, or I'm a dwarf. Well, that you certainly are not, said Gimli. But what did I say? Mortals cannot go drinking ent draughts and expect no more to come of them than of a pot of beer. Ent draughts, said Sam. There you go about ents again, but what they are beats me. Why, it will take weeks before we get all these things sized up. Weeks indeed, said Pippin, and then Frodo will have to be locked up in a tower in Minas Tirith and write it all down. Otherwise he will forget half of it, and poor old Bilbo will be dreadfully disappointed. At length Gandalf rose. The hands of the king are hands of healing, dear friends, he said. But you went to the very brink of death ere he recalled you, putting forth all his power, and sent you into the sweet forgetfulness of sleep. And though you have indeed slept long and blessedly, still it is now time to sleep again.
And now I feel like I need a nap. So let's go ahead and go back to the beginning of that passage, right? The party and the day both come to an end. The moon is rising above the river. Frodo and Sam are just enjoying being in Ithilien. How could you not, especially after having to spend all that time in Mordor? This land, remember, was a refuge, and it was really the last refuge on their journey to Mordor. And now it's their reward and rest after.
And they're talking with the rest of the company, sans Aragorn.
Well, yeah.
Merry, Pippin, Gandalf, Legolas, and Gimli. The king's probably busy doing king stuff, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. Is Arwen visible? Is she around?
Writing a letter to Arwen.
There you go.
Something like that.
Yeah.
In this chat, Frodo and Sam get caught up on pretty much all of books 3 and 5, really.
Yeah, that's true.
That will have taken a little while. We've got the Orcs, the Ents, Rohan, Aglarond, Minas Tirith, Meduseld, Helm's Deep, the Pelennor, and Aragorn's arrival. It's all a bit much for poor Sam to keep in his head.
Just a bit. But despite all the crazy things that he's been told, his mind doesn't go to those things. His mind keeps going back to the very obvious fact right in front of him, that Merry and Pippin are taller than they were, and not by a small amount, a good solid 3 inches. And again, given their height percentage-wise, that would be like me gaining 5 or 6 inches in height before you see me at the next Oxenmoot. What do you think? Me at 6'3", I like the idea. It's pretty unlikely.
Well, considering I'm 5'2", I could get some of that Ent draft, I tell you. I wouldn't mind that at all.
No, I wouldn't mind that either. That could be useful. It would sell for quite a bit on the open market, I got to say.
Yes.
We just need a venture capitalist to help us, formulate cement drafts.
Oh, if somebody's out there and wants to do that, absolutely. Because I would pay good, cold, hard cash for a little Ent draft, that's for sure. Just a couple, a couple more inches of height would be good. But Sam's "or I'm a dwarf" line certainly raises Gimli's eyebrows. But
yeah, you bet. He's not even paying any attention, and he just hears, "or I'm a dwarf." Oh, that's certainly
I
not.
do not think so. Yes. But then he goes and mentions Ent drafts, which once again throws poor Sam into a bit of confusion. It's going to be weeks before we sort all this out.
Even that might be optimistic, Sam. And that, of course, gets followed by the line that Tolkien originally had Pippin saying to Frodo before the feast, right? When we were reading that alternative version, that draft from earlier, that he'd have to write it all down before he forgot it in order to avoid disappointing Bilbo, which I have to say that's kind of a cheap shot, Pippin. I mean, we all know how much Frodo admires Bilbo. So putting that kind of pressure on him, come on, that's not cool.
Typical Pippin.
I know. Getting to dig in on him.
And Gandalf says, well, this has been fun. Party's over. After all, you nearly died. Aragorn had to use all his power to save you. And it's not a good idea to pull an all-nighter the first day you're back awake. Good point.
That is a good point, yeah. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Party's over. Yeah, absolutely. In the part we skipped, while Gandalf's comments were directed to Frodo and Sam, Gimli wants Pippin to call it a night as well. He goes back to when he found him in the carnage at the Black Gate, buried under a heap of bodies found only by his little hairy foot.
Yeah, and Gimli pulling the carcass of that troll, most likely, off of Pippin and checking if he was alive or dead. I mean, that's... Yeah. Pippin's been through some things, I think, in the last 24 hours. Well, no, it's more than that, isn't it? Because it's weeks ago.
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. He's only been awake for 24 hours. That's what we find out, right? Like, wait a minute. You were just in the same, basically, coma that Frodo and Sam were in.
Yes, indeed. It turns out Pippin's only been alive or awake one more day than Frodo and Sam.
And he's acting like he's been around for a while.
Yes, yeah.
Oh, Gandalf's not as close as he used to, you know. He laughs a lot more. And really? You've been awake for one more day, Pip.
Gimli wraps it up. It's late even for a dwarf who didn't nearly die in the fight.
It's true. Good point.
Okay. Do you want to take us to the next part there?
Yeah, actually, I think this will actually finish off the chapter. So I'm going to go ahead and pick up. I know.
I don't want it to end.
I know. But then we get to the Steward and the King, and we all want to get there, don't we?
I'll give you that.
All right. "And I," said Legolas, "shall walk in the woods of this fair land, which is rest enough. In days to come, if my elven lord allows, some of our folk shall remove hither, and when we come, it shall be blessed for a while. For a while, a month, a life, 100 years of men. But Anduin is near, and Anduin leads down to the sea, to the sea. To the sea, to the sea, the white gulls are crying. The wind is blowing and the white foam is flying. West, west away, the round sun is falling. Grey ship, do you hear them calling? The voices of my people that have gone before me. I will leave the woods that bore me. For our days are ending and our years failing. I will pass the wide waters, lonely sailing." And then I'll skip the rest of the verse.
Oh, it's really poignant.
Isn't it? I know. I can't wait to kind of dig into that a little bit. It's one of those blink and you miss it moments, as so many of these bits of poetry are. And so singing, Legolas went away down the hill. Then the others also departed, and Frodo and Sam went to their beds and slept. And in the morning they rose again in hope and peace, and they spent many days in Ithilien. For the Field of Cormallen, where the host was now encamped, was near to Henneth-Anun, and the stream that flowed from its falls could be heard in the night as it rushed down through its rocky gate and passed through the flowery meads into the tides of Anduin by the Isle of Caerandros. The hobbits wandered here and there, visiting again the places that they had passed before, and Sam hoped always in some shadow of the woods or secret glade to catch, maybe, a glimpse of the great Oliphant. And when he learned that at the siege of Gondor there had been a great number of these beasts, but that they were all destroyed, he thought it a sad loss. "Well, one can't be everywhere at once, I suppose," he said. "But I missed a lot, seemingly." In the meanwhile, the host made ready for the return to Minas Tirith. The weary rested, and the hurt were healed. For some had labored and fought much with the remnants of the Easterlings and Southrons, until all were subdued. And latest of all, those returned who had passed into Mordor and destroyed the fortresses in the north of the land. But at the last, when the month of May was drawing near, the captains of the West set out again, and they went aboard ship with all their men, and they sailed from Caerandros down Anduin to Osgiliath, and there they remained for 1 day. And the day after they came to the green fields of the Pelennor, and saw again the white towers under tall Mindalduin, the city of the men of Gondor, last memory of Westernesse that had passed through the darkness and fire to a new day. And there, in the midst of the fields, they set up their pavilions and awaited the morning, for it was the eve of May, and the king would enter his gates with the rising of the sun. Okay, I kind of got chills just at that last little bit. The king's coming, man.
And beautiful prose again.
I know, isn't it? Oh.
So much of that in this chapter. Absolutely glorious.
It really is. You just can't skip this stuff, folks. This is such an important, pivotal chapter. Yeah.
I agree. So if we go back to the beginning of what you were reading there, we're reminded that Legolas doesn't need to sleep.
Yeah, that's
as
right.
is the way with elves, and doesn't need the kind of rest that men need each day. And, of course, hobbits.
Yeah.
So in lieu of sleep, Legolas shall take a walk in the woods, as you do.
As you do, as one does when you're not sleeping, yeah. And then there's the mention that if his father, I know the text says, if my elven lord, if my dad allows.
If dad lets me.
Exactly. Oh, dad, look what followed me home. Can I keep him? Gimli's like, wait a minute. What did you say? So if Thranduil will allow, Legolas would like to lead some of his people down here to Ithilien and live here a while. A month, a century, whatever, somewhere in between. This actually happens, of course, though we don't know precisely when. We do read in Appendix A, interestingly enough, by the way, it's in the section on Durin's folk, that Legolas, Gimli's friend, also brought south elves out of Greenwood, and they dwelt in Ithilien, and it became once again the fairest country in all the Westlands.
I love the fact that, we'll stay for a little bit. Month, a century, 1,000 years,
100,
whatever.
exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's a blink of time to us. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then in Appendix B, the Tale of Years, in the very last entry, for the year Shire Reckoning 1541, 122 years from this moment, after the passing of King Elessar, it says, Legolas built a grey ship in Ithilien and sailed down Anduin and so over sea.
That's right.
But he knows that no matter how beautiful Ithilien is, and would be with his people in it, the sea calls, and Anduin is a call to that sea.
Indeed it is. And this song, it's really like a sequel or a second part of the song that he began back in the chapter of The Last Debate. That song feels more like a prologue to this one. There we read, Tall grows the grass there. In the wind from the sea, the white lilies sway. So in that song, it was about how the gulls were calling him to the sea. And here they are actually crying to him now. That same wind is blowing, but instead of white lilies swaying, it's white foam flying.
And he speaks of a grey ship, which is what he's going to build in 122 years' time, or tomorrow in elf time.
Well, right, exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and the waters that lie between him and the undying lands. The Lost Isle, Elvenhome, Eressëa, these are all references to the island of Tol Eressëa, located near the shores of Aman.
That's right.
And he goes away to his non-sleep singing walk.
Elves. Must be nice. That sort of wraps up the party, right? Frodo and Sam head back to their beds, and I've got to say that must be a really nice feeling after their long road. And this time it's to proper sleep rather than, can I call it what it is, medically induced coma. I mean, they were asleep for a very long time, and you know, it wasn't the normal kind of sleep, but now they're resting and they wake. I love this phrase, rising again in hope and peace. And they get to spend some more time in Ithilien, right? Let's not gloss over this. They're there for several more days in a place of refuge that's also now a place of recovery.
I love that rising again in hope and peace.
Yeah.
Two things that neither of them had really felt for quite some time.
Yeah, well, certainly peace. And Sam might have had a little tiny bit of hope for a very long time, but peace was not something either of them had for, well, since the last time they were here.
Right. And we get more on the Field of Cormallen. We learn here that it's close to Henneth Annwn, the window on the west, and the waterfall behind which Frodo was watching the moon that one night just 1 month ago, March 8th to April 8th, is the stream that they walk beside on the way to the feast and that leads to the Anduin by Caer Andros. It's just a month ago.
I know. Stunning. A month. March 8th to April 8th, but it does feel like it's been a lot longer given what they've gone through.
And it must have felt a lot longer to them as well.
I'm sure. Well, and half that time was asleep. So really, 17 days to their conscious selves from March 8th to March 25th. And yet, wow, it feels like so much longer. So they do wander around, right? They're visiting the places they'd seen before, you know, maybe where they stewed the conies and things like that. But Sam, poor guy, he keeps hoping to see even a glimpse of that amazing Oliphant. Though, I got to say, not only does it seem unlikely, it also seems really dangerous if he did.
Right.
And then we see his sorrow at the loss of so many of these beasts at the Pelennor. I understand that. I mean, these creatures were not inherently evil, right? They were used by the Southrons as instruments of war, but they're beautiful, majestic beasts. And Sam is deeply sorrow. And Sam is experiencing deep sorrow at the thought of so many of them being destroyed. And then finally his recognition, and boy, he's kind of on the nose on this one. I've missed a lot, seemingly. Yeah, Sam, you have. You've missed.
Yeah. Well, you know, while he and Frodo were doing that simple thing of taking a long walk with a piece of jewelry.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there were some action moments going on, absolutely. And he's still not got his head around all of the things that his friends have experienced.
It's going to take him a long time to get Sam caught up because it's Sam. And so he's going to have to hear things, I think, a few times because he's going to get caught up on little details and sort of miss some of the big picture stuff and be like, wait a minute, can you run that by me one more time? Oh, wait a minute, you're taller now. Can we come back to that? Because you're still taller and I don't understand that.
Yeah. What do you mean giant walking trees?
How do you describe that to somebody who hadn't seen them? What do you tell Sam and Frodo? Well, he kind of looked like a birch or maybe an elm. I don't know. He was tall, 14 feet plus, and he could break rocks like they were nothing. And he talked walked very slow. Yeah.
Yeah, poor
Missed a
Sam.
lot.
Yeah, he's missed a lot. But now it's time to go back to the city.
Yeah.
After all, we've got a king to put on a throne.
Mm-hmm.
And we get a quick glimpse of those who've had to keep doing all the work in the background.
That's right. These people were not here for the party, right? They were out doing things. While these people are recovering, some are out there still fighting with the men. Like we talked about last time, they're not like the orcs and other creatures that were driven so directly by the will of Sauron. So when Sauron was destroyed and those orcs and trolls and other creatures of Mordor scattered or took their own lives or flung themselves into the abyss, men, a lot of them stood and fought. And so that meant a lot of the guys of Gondor and Rohan had to go and do the job. And then others, interestingly, had gone into Mordor itself to destroy the strongholds in the north of the country. I'm thinking of Durthang, right? Where Frodo and Sam, they got a glimpse of that. They didn't go in it, but they got to the road that was going to lead to it before they hung a right and then got caught. But yeah, Durthang and all the other fortresses up there and the watchtowers and things that they would have gone in to destroy. So a lot of work that still needed to be done during those intervening weeks.
And yet more story that we never really get to hear.
I know. You want to know, were there any leftover forces of Sauron there? Were any, maybe some of the southern reserve units or something like that might have been necessary to fight just to get to those fortresses? I don't know.
And who are the leaders of these armies of men?
Yeah.
Because, the big guys are partying right now.
Exactly. Who is out there doing this work? Baragond. Is out there doing that work. We don't see his name mentioned. I bet he's out there doing it.
More than likely. So we're nearing the end of April now.
Yeah.
They board the ships and they sail down the river from Cairandros towards Osgiliath, and they stay there for one day before coming to the Pelennor.
Oh, and that majestic sight, right? The site of Mindalluin and Minas Tirith itself. The city still in one piece after all that it has gone through. It's still a place of strength even after all these battles. And the forces of Aragorn and his men, they all set up their tents and they wait for May 1st, the very day when Aragorn is going to enter the city at dawn. And that phrase, the king would enter his gates with the rising of the sun, and the king is going to enter his gates with the rising of the next chapter for us. Cannot wait.
Yeah.
So,
looking forward to that.
It's going to be good stuff. Though, of course, we'll actually go back in time first because we get to experience the destruction of the ring and the fall of Sauron from the perspective of the people in Minas Tirith when it happens. And that's going to be fantastic. But there in the midst of the fields, they set up their pavilions and awaited the mailbag. For it was the mailbag segment, and Barliman would enter his gates with the rising of the sun. Sara, what does Barliman have for us tonight?
Not a party, unfortunately.
No.
So, Aidan S. from Austin, Texas. Have you seen Sean lately?
Seriously, yeah.
Well, Aidan writes in saying that he's never really been bothered by the absence of the scouring of the Shire in the Jackson films, even if it is a great chapter in the book. And Aidan goes on to say that he's always found the conclusion of Sauron's defeat, which we talked about last week, more satisfying.
Oh.
He then goes on to challenge us, asking us to change his mind about the purpose of the chapter, the scouring of the Shire, and asking for our own thoughts on its absence from the movies. Alan?
Wow. That's going to be an interesting one. Here's the thing. The scouring of the Shire, it's not an add-on. It's not an epilogue. It's not the after effects of the story. It is an essential part of the narrative. It's something that Tolkien foresaw from the very outset, like we read earlier today about, it started in the Shire, it has to end there. And it is. It's the classic ending of the hero's quest. The hero returns home, he finds that things are different, and it's mostly because the hero himself is not the same. Tolkien didn't want his hobbits to go off and fight in a big war and then come home to a Shire that had been totally untouched, right? I mean, that wasn't his own experience. Great foreign wars still affect the people at home, and the fight wasn't over just because Aragorn got crowned in Gondor. The scouring of the Shire makes the whole thing very personal, very intimate, if you will. Christopher Tolkien talks about this. He considers that already in August of 1939, Tolkien had thought that during the War of the Ring, there's also some war in the Shire, caused by the Sackville Bagginses, and then later thought to make Saruman's ruffians responsible. The chapter itself was written in summer of 1948, and that was when Tolkien decided that Sharky was Saruman himself, and you can find that in The Return of the Shadow. Honestly, we talked about the climax being this moment, the eucatastrophe being Frodo and Sam, recognized for their heroism. You could certainly make an argument that the Scouring of the Shire is another climax of the story, or possibly even the real climax of the story, because, before the quest, the hobbits don't even see the world. They sort of assume the world cannot see them, right? I mean, the world doesn't work that way, but they don't know that. The four hobbits come back from Gondor and all of their adventures to find their home turned into, frankly, like a mini Mordor. And at their separation between Bree and the Shire, Gandalf tells them, this is what you've been trained for. This is why you went through all this, right? This is the purpose that you're going to serve. And sure enough, they rise to the occasion. They fight their most personal battle, all of them. Well, except for Frodo, who doesn't fight. But he has his own battles to face, that's for sure.
Exactly. Now, earlier, you referenced letter 131.
Yeah.
And that's when the Scouring of the Shire is actually mentioned. And Tolkien says, you have to go back to the Shire.
Yeah. Started there, has to end there. Yeah.
Right. It's not the only time he writes about the Scouring of the Shire. He also wrote about it in letter 181, a slightly lesser known letter, I think, to Michael Straight, the editor of New Republic. And it's a draft letter. It's unsent and undated, but it's probably from around January or February 1956.
Right.
Before writing a review of The Lord of the Rings, he wrote to Tolkien and he was asking a number of different questions. But one of the questions was if the Scouring of the Shire was directed especially to contemporary England.
Oh, yeah.
And Tolkien's response was that there was no special reference to England in the Shire. I'm not always sure if I agree with John Ronald sometimes, and I'm not sure about this either.
Well, remember, you got to take every one of his letters, you got to think, who's he writing to, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, Tolkien said he took his models like anyone else from such life as he knew, and he says there's no post-war reference. Okay.
I can believe that more than I can believe no special reference to England at all, because there are other things that he said that makes it clear there are some, right? I mean, that the Shire is basically a Warwickshire village at the time of the Jubilee. So he's certainly making some connections to England there.
Right.
But yeah, the post-war references, I mean, he drafted the story before the war for the most part, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay, people didn't come back from the war to find that England had been invaded and that they had to clean out England and things like that. And okay, so we don't have a parallel, but then we don't put equal signs in between Tolkien's text and the real world, because that's not
it's not an allegory in any way.
Exactly. No. But the Scouring of the Shire is, a little bit like that in the sense it does tell us about how when you've gone out into the world and experienced the things that the hobbits have, you can't come back to home and think it's exactly the same.
Even if it were the same, you're not the same, so you're going to see it differently. But in the Hobbit's case, the Shire is definitely radically different, yeah.
Exactly. Now, in that letter 181, does go on to sort of explain himself. He says he didn't feel that England had to suffer anything like the malice of Sharky and his ruffians, but he did feel that the spirit of Isengard, if not Mordor, was always cropping up, as in the destroying of Oxford to accommodate motor cars. He did rather like his own motor car. Let's point that out. But
that is fair. Yeah. Yeah. So here's the thing, the Scouring of the Shire, it is necessary for each and every one of those four hobbits, right? They're the main characters, not only Frodo and Sam, but Merry and Pippin are the secondary main characters. And we most often see the story through their lens. Most of the time it's Sam, right? It's always the least knowledgeable, which is very often Sam. And throughout these books, all six of them, we get a front row seat to observe each of the four go on a unique journey. Got incredible individual growth, both figuratively and literally, as Sam observed in Merry and Pippin, for each of the four Hobbit protagonists. They're very naive at the beginning, maybe some more than others. I think Frodo's probably a little less naive, having, spoken with Bilbo about a lot of things. But Sam and Pippin also, because of his youth, are both incredibly naive. They're all comfort-loving hobbits for sure, because that's just hobbits. And their biggest concern really is just making sure they get all their meals, which, that changes over time. As they progress, we start to see the strength of hobbits, right? That indomitable spirit that you talked about earlier, the doughty at bay. And it's the way they adapt and persevere, the way they really end up becoming reluctant heroes of the whole of Middle-earth. The scouring then is, I would argue it's essential to show how far they have come in that character development. So when they come back, they're not going to let tyranny and oppression and all of this stuff that's going on, all the terrible rules that are in place, they're not going to do that without standing up and bringing the Shire together. It's what they've done all along for the last several months. And I think this is also why Gandalf did not come with them right away. His work was done. He'd announced his retirement, really, at this party. They didn't need any further guidance, and they were, frankly, well equipped to retake the Shire alone.
Absolutely. And let's think about what the Shire represents, because I think it's based in part, at least, on Tolkien's memories of childhood.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Bilbo and Frodo, they lead the lives of landed gentry, but their lifestyle also matches a child's dream of what being an adult is like. You know, when you're a kid and you think being an adult just represents all freedoms and everything's wonderful, and oh boy, do you get a shock.
No more rules. I could do what I want. Yeah.
Right. Wouldn't that be lovely? Wouldn't it? I mean, for Bilbo and Frodo in particular, their financial needs are met. They don't seem to have to put any effort into remaining solvent. They spend their time as they please. And we learn that in the Shire, people give presents on their birthdays, and you can expect to be invited to a birthday party at least once a week. Well, what more would a young child want?
My goodness.
So the first chapter has a feel of The Hobbit.
Yeah.
You know, going back to The Hobbit. But then Frodo learns of the nature of the ring and that its presence brings danger on the Shire, and that by leaving the Shire behind, he might be able to save it. And he says, I feel that as long as the Shire lies behind, safe and comfortable, I shall find wandering more bearable. I shall know that somewhere there is a firm foothold, even if my feet cannot stand there again.
Yeah.
But the Shire isn't safe and comfortable.
No, it is
and
not.
It isn't the firm foothold that he thought it was. Because when the hobbits return, they are different, and so is the Shire.
Yeah.
We get a hint of this in chapter 3 when Frodo talks to Gildor. And of course, this is also a scene that's omitted from the films.
Mm-hmm. As is poor Gildor himself, yeah.
As is poor Gildor himself. But Gildor's words are important, he says.
They are.
But it is not your own Shire, said Gildor. Others dwelt here before hobbits were, and others will dwell here again when hobbits are no more. So the Shire is not an eternal place. It's a fragile and fleeting thing, and that makes it seem more real in many ways.
Yeah.
The hobbits can't return to the Shire they left behind because none of us can ever return to our childhood.
True.
When we change, home changes. Mm-hmm. And in the scouring of the Shire, we see the Shire through the eyes of adults. Hard work and sacrifice is now necessary to maintain it, to put it back together.
Right.
And parts of the past are actually lost forever.
True.
But if we can't go back to the past, at least we can build the future. And if it will not last forever, it will at least be a place where our children can live.
Yeah.
And for whom was the Red Book written, if not for Eleanor?
Oh, I love that. I love that. I also love it that my daughter's name is Eleanor. So I just sort of I pictured her for a brief moment. Yeah. I think you make a really good point there. The Shire, I loved what you said, that the Shire is not an eternal place, going back to Gildor's words, The land itself may be there, but it's not the Shire, right? It's not the Hobbit's place in the world, because Hobbits haven't always been. And even when they were, they didn't always exist here. And they aren't always going to exist here. There will come a time where hobbits aren't here anymore, but this land will be here and somebody else will dwell here. That long view that Gildor is espousing is something that what we see in the Hobbit's return to the Shire, because we've had an absence, right? So not only have they changed, but the Shire's changed. I would have loved to have seen it, frankly. I know it's not practical in the film. I mean, coming back to the question and Jackson's decision not to include it, it was already an incredibly long movie. The director's cut of that film is pushing almost 4 hours, if I remember correctly. What are you going to do? Make a 6-hour movie? Turn it into 4 movies? No. I mean, look, you can make the argument, well, if Jackson had done the Shelob stuff and put that at the end of the Two Towers like he should have, well, then he might have had room in Return of the King to include some scouring. But 6 of one, half dozen of the other. Either way, the films are over 11 and a half hours long between the three of them. What do? You can't add that much time. But I would have loved to have seen it. I think, honestly, it would be like a whole 2 or 3 season television series, the
can you
Scouring
imagine?
the Shire.
That would be
Fantastic.
cool. Yeah, we'd actually get Tom Bombadil, maybe. That
I
would be
know.
great.
Yeah. And Farmer Maggot, we'd get all these. Oh, and Lobelia, when she finally emerges from the lock holes, would be fantastic. But
I do have a sneaking love for Lobelia.
I know. She's, I do too. I love her redemption arc. It's great.
It is. And if you want to use the word indomitable again.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Talk about indomitable. My goodness. But yeah, I think I'm not going to criticize Jackson's decision to leave it out. Nobody would have sat around for a 5 or 6 hour movie.
Yeah.
But it is an absolutely essential part of the story. Cutting it means telling a different story. And that's what you have to look at. But in fairness, all adaptations are slightly different stories than the original. They have to be, by definition. And as a result, the films tell a different story than the books. And in so doing, it's...
Right, because they come back to a safe and secure Shire.
Yeah, it's a lesser story in that way. So it is certainly a drawback. I would have loved to have seen it, not just from, my experience as a reader, but because I think that would have given us a better arc for the hobbits themselves.
I agree.
Yeah.
I hope that's answered the question.
I hope so. Well, folks, that does wrap it up for another episode of the Prancing Pony Podcast. But join us again next week when Éowyn does not desire the speech of living men.
Yeah, well, who does? Folks, Alan and I want to thank the members of Team BPP. Editor Jordan Rannells, Barleyman Becca Davis, Social Media Manager Casey Hilsey, Event and Patreon Community Coordinator Katie McKenna, Graphic Artist Megan Collins, and Website Guru Phil Dean.
That's right. Now, please take a minute to check out theprancingponypodcast.com. You're going to find show notes there, outtakes, blooper reels, whatever you want to call them, Prancing Pony Ponderings, as well as our online storefront where you can get some PPP merchandise, including stuff with the chapter-specific artwork that Megan's been coming up with for the last couple of seasons.
Wonderful stuff. And please take a moment to visit our library page. The Prancing Pony Podcast has always been about the books. So if you're interested in a book we've mentioned on the show, you'll find a link for it in our library. We get a small amount of compensation when you make your purchase, and we thank you for that.
Indeed, we do. And we also want to thank our patrons at the Kierdance contribution tier. I'll start with DeMay in Alaska, Chad in Texas, Lance in New Jersey, Paul in Colorado, Joseph in Michigan, Kathy from North Carolina, Carlos in California, Brian in the UK, Ned from Connecticut, Jerry from Washington, Joe in Washington, Erwin from the Netherlands, Ben in Minnesota, Anthony in Texas, Karen in the UK, Zaksu in Illinois, Brian in Texas, Sarah in New Jersey, and Joshua in Massachusetts.
And there's also Lucy in Texas, Erica in Texas, Carson in Oklahoma, Vivian in California, James in Massachusetts, Anne in Kentucky, Sean in New Jersey, Mason in California, Maureen from Massachusetts, John in Japan, Olivia in London, Jackson in Tennessee, Robert in Arizona, Nick in Wisconsin, Lewis in South Carolina, Thomas in Germany, Craig in California, Bailey in Texas, and Kevin in Massachusetts. Thank you all so very much for your support.
Indeed. Thank you.
Now make sure you don't miss any episodes of the Prancing Pony Podcast. Subscribe now through Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or your favorite podcast app.
And one last thing as always, don't forget to send your thoughts, comments, and, well, most of all, your singing of the lay of Frodo of the Nine Fingers and the Ring of Doom to Bartleman, theprancingponypodcast.com. We'll get some ideas, that's for sure. So, folks, if you want your voice literally heard, well, just send us audio of your question. Visit podinbox.com/prancingponypod and record your question for us.
Yep, but please be sure to still email the question to Barleyman, though. Even though Barleyman's been a bit more reliable lately, there's still a lot of mail to sort through, and we'll try to get to you just as soon as we're able.
As always, though, this has been far too short a time to spend among such excellent and admirable listeners. But until next time.
Howlvar.